Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Before Coffee.
Hello.
Morning.
Good morning. Had to find my phone.
It was hidden under the bed.
Yeah, you gotta find one thing at a time. Find your brain, gotta find your phone, It's a sequence.
Just a little chill.
Yep.
I was just imagining you as a jalapeno.
Why?
That you were a chili.
Oh. Morning.
So,
Almost instantly ready. Almost instantly ready. Mohawk haircut. Bring it on. Dust taking up there. My cousin hit here for a minute. Good enough. Hair. Remember that?
You've got hair.
Wait. Okay.
Alright.
Ready when you are.
All right. Today on Before Coffee, Britain's delayed at Dover to miss out on compensation if EU law is scrapped.
Fox News settles blockbuster defamation lawsuit with Dominion voting systems right after the last minute, really. Before the lawsuit starts.
French trade minister to visit the UK after post-Brexit hiccup.
U.S. diplomats come under fire in Sudan conflict.
Caught short at 35,000 feet. Plane forced to turn back after toilets malfunction.
Wow. Oklahoma governor wants officials who made violent racist remarks on tape to resign. Today, on April 19th, 2023 edition of Before Coffee.
All right. For my first story, we are going to look at some more UK Brexit drama. Bus and coach passengers could lose the right to compensation if UK does not actively save the law. Passengers taking bus and coach trips to the continent stand to lose their in Dover after the UK decides to delete thousands of EU laws. Legislation specifically designed to offer redress for those on trips of longer than 250 kilometers or 155 miles has been omitted from a government list of more than 3,700 laws that risk being scrapped or changed under the controversial retained EU law bill. Unless added, it would mean compensation rights would be automatically deleted from British statute books under a sunset clause, which will sweep away all EU laws at the end of December, apart from those actively saved by Parliament. Rocio Concha, the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the Which Consumer Group, it had a question mark, Which Consumer Group, said it's clear that the government does not currently have a firm enough grip on the extent of legislation which is at risk of simply slipping off the statute books by mistake. Yeah. As things stand, if the disruption we witnessed at the port of Dover were to occur during the Easter holidays next year, thousands of passengers' rights, including eligibility for compensation in the event of delays or cancellations, would all but evaporate. Under the rules, bus passengers are entitled to snacks and meals if there is a delay of more than 90 minutes on a journey any longer than 3 hours. Accommodation and transport to and from the accommodation must be offered where a stay of 1 or more nights become necessary. Particular effort required to meet the needs of passengers with disabilities and any companion passenger. Thousands of holidaymakers, many of them children on school trips, were hit by delays in Dover of up to 18 hours at Easter. Under current laws, could claim compensation. Delays were blamed on a combination of bad weather and a post-Brexit requirement for French border police to make time-consuming checks of passengers' passport stamps to ensure non-EU citizens, including British, comply with new limits on visitor stays on the continent. The government plans to delete retained EU legislation by the end of 2023, apart from the laws that have been actively saved by ministers in Parliament. It has come under heavy fire from lawyers, the opposition, and peers, not only because of the ambitious plans to review almost 4,000 laws that have been instated over the years, like, the 70s, I think? The 70s. A group of Labour, Tory, Liberal, Democrat, and crossbench peers has been meeting in secret for weeks to discuss how to amend the bill. First government dashboard of 2,400 laws that would be affected by the REUL, or REULL, was updated this year after the discovery of 1,400 laws that were not on the original list. The Department of Transport said it continues to identify the REUL in scope of the bill and expected this list to continue to iterate. The government says the second iteration of the list of laws that could end up being deleted is not intended to provide a comprehensive account, and that the list will be updated throughout 2023. But they better damn well not get rid of this law for traveling for more than 3 hours, okay? That's what this guy at The Guardian, what's his name? This lady, Lisa O'Carroll, has said. They better not get rid of this one, okay? I want my snacks.
Yeah.
Alright, your next story. Or your first story, I should say.
All right. Fox settles a lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems. And this is from NPR, National Public Radio, David Folkenflik and Mary Yang. Fox News and its parent company, Foxcorp, have struck a deal averting a trial in the blockbuster defamation suit filed by the election tech company Dominion Voting Systems over spurious claims of fraud in the 2020 presidential race. Judge Eric Davis of Delaware Superior Court announced a settlement from his bench on Tuesday afternoon ahead of trial's scheduled start. The parties settled for $707,500,000, about half of Dominion's original $1.6 billion ask. The amount represents vindication and accountability, says Dominion lawyer Justin Nelson. Lies have consequences. Dominion CEO John Poulos told reporters, Fox has admitted telling lies about Dominion that caused enormous damage to my company, our employees, and the customers we serve. Nothing can ever make up for that. Throughout this process, we have sought accountability. Truthful reporting in the media is essential to our democracy. Fox News released a statement shortly after settlement was announced. We acknowledge the court's rulings finding certain claims about Dominion to be false. The statement said the settlement reflects his Fox continuous commitment to highest journalistic standards. Hold on. Highest journalistic. Oh my God. With a straight face, somebody read this, I'm sure. We are hopeful that our decision to resolve this dispute with Dominion amicably, instead of acrimony of a divisive trial, allows the country to move forward from these issues. Of course, using those big words like acrimony, amicably, divisive, a Fox News viewer does not understand those words. Of course, they're never going to hear the story because it's never going to be on Fox News. As much evidence as we've seen, there's still plenty more that hasn't been made public. In the trial, the documents and statements that have been redacted, which likely constitute some more damning evidence against Fox, would have been revealed, said Tom Warner, a retired Michigan corporate litigator who has been following the case closely at NPR's request. Dominion started this case because Fox's defamatory statements had severely damaged his reputation, Weiner added. By largely trying its case in the court of public opinion, Dominion has gone a long way toward restoring its good name. In the process, of course, Fox's own reputation has been seriously undermined. Not with its viewers, because they'll never know about this. A settlement was always on the table. Past the ill will, past the statements that were clearly wrong in real time, past the inflammatory arguments, and the soaring declaration of constitutional principle, a settlement has always loomed as a logical resolution of legal clash. The media voting system alleges that Fox stars, executives, journalists, and guests defamed the election tech company for segments in which wild and spurious conspiracies held it had switched votes for then President Trump to challenger Joe Biden. Dominion's legal team pursued to the pain strategy, intending to inflict the maximum discomfort for Fox News and its proprietors in order to secure a big payout and its public apologies for Fox News as possible. For Fox and its controlling owners, Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, was worth the cost to pay for the spectacle to go away. For Fox, what evidence dribbled out in court hearings and court documents piled embarrassment upon disgrace. Fox News executive Suzanne Scott warned her colleagues against running fact-checking segments by the network's own reporters debunking lies about election fraud, even if it gave such bogus claims acres of prime real estate. Many Fox hosts and executives didn't believe the conspiracy theories, but didn't stop them. Primetime stars Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, and Sean Hannity privately trashed the people who lied about Dominion on their network's airwaves, and yet also trashed the reporters who sought to hold them accountable for those lies. Its founder, Murdoch, who under oath called himself a newsman at heart, advocating going for slow and confronting Fox's pro-Trump viewers with unwelcome news in order to protect the franchise. And he didn't believe for 1 second the lies being peddled by Trump and Fox itself, even though, as Murdoch put it, the star endorsed them a bit. Host Maria Bartiromo put in an attorney spinning pro-Trump conspiracy theories and insinuating, without evidence, fraud by Dominion on the basis of a memo whose author, a Minnesota artist, called her own allegations pretty wackadoodle. Judge Davis had signaled deep skepticism over Fox's defense. So the upshot is this: Fox does not have to admit they committed any mistakes on air. They get to settle for $787 million. But eventually Fox could have settled for $787 million weeks ago. The trial still hasn't started. It barely started. Opening statements had not been read when Fox was sitting there in the courtroom and said, okay, we're settled. Like, you could have done this weeks ago, dude. And all of this stuff wouldn't have leaked out. So they really didn't gain anything in the settlement.
Well, they're not smart, so...
They saved a lot of stuff from coming out in court, but they're still being sued. This is only one lawsuit. Fox News Corp stockholders are suing the corporation for the way they did this. So there's a lot of lawsuits out there besides this one. Your story.
Okay. My next story is about the French again, and the UK, and Brexit, kind of. So, a lot of Brexit news in the headlines today. Olivier Beck says 2 countries have moved on since tensions with the government of Boris Johnson. The two countries. France's overseas trade minister will visit London on Wednesday in what is being held in Paris as a return to business as usual between the two countries after Brexit and the cross-channel tensions of Boris Johnson's leadership. It will be Olivier Beck's first official visit to UK since his appointment last year and comes after a warmer relationship was signaled with the meeting of Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and the French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris last month. Speaking before his visit about the relationship between the two countries, Beck said that there had been a change in mindset. From a trade point of view, relations between France and the UK have always been quite active. It's almost like they share a channel. There was a hiccup after Brexit, and there were a certain number of tensions with the government of Boris Johnson, but we have moved on. In comparison to the government of Boris Johnson, we can see there is a change of état d'esprit, frame of mind, and a new willingness to continue doing business together. We are neighbors and allies. We know we are confronted with some challenges today. We want to stand up to the economic and political competition from China, and if we want to have European autonomy and not depend on the US, and even if the UK is not part of the EU, I'm sure it has the same aims, we have to remain solid partners. The secret is the UK wants to become the next state of the United States. It's always been a joke since I think the 50s that they wanted.
The next step, their first step is to get an NFL franchise.
Exactly. They want to completely ignore Europe, pretend they moved across the Atlantic Ocean, and just like Europe who? That's what they really want to do.
Hands across the water.
As well as working lunch in London with the UK's Business and Trade Secretary Kemi Badenoch. Becht will meet the directors of major banking and financial institutions in the city. Will seek to reassure investors that Macron's manifesto reform program will continue despite his government's lack of parliamentary majority and 3 months of strikes. 3 months already, man, I heard. It has been. Since the show's existence, those strikes have been going on. Blockades and occasional violent clashes between police and protesters over the contested pension bill. People who think France is burning have come to the conclusion after watching three pictures on television, Beck said. You see 3 pictures of a fire and you think the whole country's on fire. Reality is those fires are mostly confined in a place in Paris. Time to time, in France we have industrial movements that are part of our history. It's not a revolution. It's not because there are demonstrations that there is a revolution. He added, at one moment or another, the protests will stop. There will be a dialogue, we will move to the next project, and we will build. Sunak and Macron meet in Paris on 10th of March, in what was seen as a bridge-building summit after years of tensions linked to Brexit and outbreaks of Anglo-French political sniping. It was the first UK-French summit in 5 years after the turbulent 10 years of Johnson and Liz Truss. You can even consider Liz Truss a 10-year. Honestly, Beck said his visit was a follow
like a 5-year.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
5 second even. Beck said his visit was a follow on to that meeting that the Windsor framework, the post-Brexit legal agreement between the European Union and the UK, passed by Parliament in March and aimed at addressing the problems of movements of goods between single market and the UK via Northern Ireland. At the Paris summit, our 2 countries reaffirmed their wish to cooperate, and I'm going to the UK to reinforce those economic, business, and industrial links further. While France marked a record trade deficit of 164 billion euros or 145 billion pounds last year, financial service in the country rose, aided by Brexit relocations. French trade with the UK plunged by 20% between 2019 and 2020, and as a combined effect of Brexit and the pandemic, but climbed to a record 63.3 billion in 2022. Beck said the latest figures show France remained the UK's 8th biggest customer and its 6th biggest supplier, and that Britain remained the 3rd biggest investor in France. He will also visit French Lycée and the University College London Centre for Artificial Intelligence, where a joint team of British and French researchers engage in an international partnership. There are 2 people with a history that has often been difficult, but we are resilient people. We have always had difficult challenges, and Brexit is one for the British people, but we have always overcome the challenges we have faced and come out of it stronger, and I think it will be the same this time for our 2 countries. Ending Becht. There you go.
Is Becht French or is he English?
He's French, I think.
Oh, okay.
I don't think you can be like a minister of a government unless you're actually from... Well, let's be honest. Depends where he's from. Because if you're from Brittany, You're more British than French, historically.
Yeah. I suppose. I mean, they'll get past that stuff decades ago, though. I mean, everybody's just basically. Well, it'd be funny with a French accent because kind of the statements he's making are like, "This will solve itself because we had French, and we'll move on to the next thing because we all get along."
Yeah, I can't do that accent, so yeah. I guess you should have read that one.
I end up doing that Monty Python parody accent.
Yeah.
Now go away. I won't do that. I will taunt you a second time. Right. In comprehensive news of the world, we are starting to pay attention to Africa, but in the U.S., well, what does it take for us to pay attention to the conflicts in Africa? Well, here's what it takes. U.S. diplomatic convoy fired on in Sudan as intense fighting continues between rival forces. That's what it takes. This is also from NPR. I guess they don't have the writer's name on it. U.S. diplomatic convoy was fired upon in Sudan Monday as those who were inside were unharmed. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken told reporters Tuesday he called the incident reckless and irresponsible. Blinken, who was in Japan for a group of 7 foreign ministers meeting, said a convoy of clearly marked U.S. embassy vehicles came under fire that preliminary reports indicate the attackers were linked to a powerful force fighting with the Sudanese army for control of the country for a third consecutive day. He said everyone in the convoy was safe and at home. A contingency planning for U.S. personnel in Sudan was underway with interagency partners, the State Department said Tuesday in a statement to CBS News. The State Department also said that Khartoum Airport remains closed and that there are plans for a coordinated evacuation of American civilians who are still advised to stay indoors and shelter in place. Blinken called for an immediate 24-hour ceasefire as a step toward a longer truce. There were reports that the Sudanese army had agreed to a 24-hour halt to hostilities to begin Tuesday evening after the paramilitary forces it is fighting said they would also adhere to such a ceasefire. However, Stephanie Dujarric, a spokesman UN Security General Antonio Guterres, told CBS News correspondent Pamela Falk on Tuesday that the United Nations could not confirm any agreement for a ceasefire. Blinken had said he had spoken by phone with Sudan's Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan and the leader of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces (RSF), General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemedti, and told them any danger to U.S. diplomats and residents in Sudan and U.S. staff and other humanitarian partners was unacceptable. That's strong diplomatic language for don't fuck with us. In a joint statement Tuesday, the G7 foreign ministers condemned the fighting. We urge the parties to end hostilities immediately without conditions, it said, calling for them to return negotiation and reduce tensions. Explosions and gunfire thundered outside Sudanese capital Khartoum and other cities huddled in their homes. The fighting remains underway. Ataya Abdullah Atira of the Sudan's Doctors Syndicate told the Associated Press, "We are hearing constant gunfire. At least 180 people have been killed and over 1,800 wounded in the fighting since the fighting erupted," U.S. envoy Volker Perthes told the reporters. The two sides are using tanks, artillery, and other heavy weapons in densely populated areas. Fighter jets swooped overhead and anti-aircraft fire lit up the skies as darkness fell. The toll could be much higher since there are many bodies in the streets around central Khartoum that no one can reach because of the clashes. There have been no official word of how many civilians and combatants have been killed. The Doctors Group earlier put the number of civilian deaths at 97. The targeting of humanitarian workers and facilities continues in Sudan. We're receiving reports of attacks and sexual violence against aid workers. And yesterday, our office in South Darfur was looted. Melanie Martin Griffiths, an Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, wrote on Twitter Tuesday. Sudden outbreak of violence over the weekend between the nation's two top generals, each backed by tens of thousands of heavily armed fighters, trapped millions of people in the homes, or whether they could find shelter, with supplies running low and several hospital forces shut down. Top diplomats on 4 continents scrambled to broker a truce, and UN Security Council was set to discuss the crisis. She said a shell struck a neighbor's house Sunday, killing 3 people. We couldn't take them to a hospital to bury them. In central Khartoum, sustained gunfire erupted and major smoke near the main artillery headquarters and major battlefront. Nearby, 88 students and staffers have been trapped in engineering college library at Khartoum University since the start of the fighting. One of the students said in a video posted on online Monday. One student was killed during clashes outside and another wounded. He said they do not have food or water, he said, showing a room full of people sleeping on the floor. Sudan is known for having a large, let's call it, religious minority that is not Christian or, okay, let's put it delicately. So we have a terrorism center taking place in Sudan. Famously, there was a famous bombing at the embassy. I'll tell you what that was. What year that was, I'll look it up for you.
Alright, well, you look that up.
1988. There was a famous embassy bombing there, yes, by Muslim terrorists. I hate to say it. Go ahead.
Well, all people all over the world use religion as a reason to be terrorist. So,
yeah,
that's kind of the bad thing about religion. It gives me an excuse to be a bad person.
Your invisible man sucks. My invisible man rules. Yours is ugly. Look at that ugly ruler you got where you're pretending invisible man. Your turn.
In hacking news, Russian hackers want to disrupt or destroy UK infrastructure. Minister warns. Oliver Droughton, the Cabinet Office Minister, will issue a national alert to key businesses and growing international concerns that our Russian struggles in Ukraine are under pressure. Kremlin is searching for new ways to threaten the West. U.S. intelligence has leaked earlier this month, warned that the Russian hackers had claimed to take over control systems belonging to Canadian gas pipeline at the end of February, with the aim of causing an explosion. Dowden is expected to tell the Cyber UK event that disclosing the threat is not something we do lightly. He will argue it is necessary to get companies in utilities and other critical sectors to realize that they have to invest in needed cybersecurity, defend themselves and the country from external threats. Top secret intelligence sniper in the Pentagon files that leaked earlier this month warned that a Russian cybercriminal group called Zyra had claimed to have taken over the control system of the unnamed pipeline. Because we're not going to tell you which one, but it's one of them. Hackers then asked the country's FSB spy agency for instructions on what to do next. However, there's no corroborating evidence in the public domain that a natural gas pipeline company in Canada suffered the hacker attack described or that an explosion took place. The intelligence may also have helped prevent an attack, although it was labeled as being for US eyes only. Royal Mail was targeted by Russian criminal hackers earlier this year, with the Lockbit group demanding $8 million ransom after the attackers had encrypted files crucial to the company's international operations. It rejected the demands as absurd, and according to the transcript of the negotiations leaked by the hackers online. Dowden, Minister of what is he again? The Cabinet Office Minister, did not name any of the hacker groups, but the reference to Wagner, the large parliamentary group that is playing an important role on the ground in Ukraine, suggests that the UK believes efforts are being made to organize the criminal groups of hackers into something more permanent. Critical national infrastructure covers areas such as gas, electricity, telecoms, and postal networks, as well as the emergency services and other organizations on which daily life relies. Serious attacks remain rare, but in the US, an oil pipeline on the East Coast briefly shut down in operations 2 years ago after it was hacked by an online extortion gang, leading to shortages of petrol and jet fuel. I don't think those two things are necessary for life. Yeah, okay, I can't drive my car. But you're not gonna die because you can't drive your car somewhere. Russian hackers, also, maybe they should do that. I'm not outsiding with the hackers here, but shut down all the oil. That's what I say.
Well, there's transportation costs with getting goods to market, though. This kind of crashes your economy.
Russian hackers have targeted Ukraine utilities both before and since last year's invasion. Ukraine has been able to maintain supplies with the help of the West, although some of the cyber attacks last autumn were conducted in tandem with missile strikes aimed at power and substations on its energy grid. Yeah, I know what you're saying, but also we need to stop relying on carbon fuel. Really do.
Can't happen overnight.
In short news, 5 of the 8 toilets broken down on Australian Airlines flight carrying 300 people from Vienna to New York. An Austrian Airlines plane had to return 2 hours into a flight from Vienna to New York after 5 of its 8 toilets broke down. About 300 people were on board Monday's 8-hour Boeing 777 flight. The crew decided to turn around after finding a technical problem was preventing the toilets from flushing properly. A spokesperson for the airline told Agence France Presse on Tuesday. He said the problem had not occurred on Austrian airline flights before. The plane has since been fixed and was back in service. The spokesperson added, affected passengers were rebooked on other flights. I just thought that was a funny headline to be on the front page, so I wanted to read that. I didn't even know you had that many toilets on a plane. 8 toilets.
Was it 747?
No, 777.
That's a big plane, I think.
Yeah, obviously it has 8 toilets.
I think it's got the middle seats and everything. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it has 9 seats. I think. Oh no, not 9 seats. There's like a whole 5-seat row in the middle, and then
it would be
3,
like 9 or 7. Yeah, it's wider than like a 737.
But that's that news. I just wanted to quickly read about toilets.
That's just disgusting. Disgusting, smelly, awful thing. People are going, can we turn around? I'm not flying all the way across the Atlantic with holding it because I can't use the bathroom.
Yeah, it's very unhealthy to hold for that long.
A bunch of constipated people landing in New York going, this is going to be fun. All right. Well, hopefully everything got off well and everybody landed safely. Oh, and a short story. Oklahoma governor wants officials who made... We lived in Oklahoma for a little while. This happened not too far from where we lived in McAllister. It's kind of a county and the border with Arkansas. And racist remarks on... Oklahoma governor wants officials who made violent racist remarks and taped to resign. This is from NPR also. Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt has called on 4 county officials to resign after they were caught on tape allegedly making violent and racist remarks and jokes. There is simply no place for such hateful rhetoric on the state of Oklahoma, especially by those who serve or represent the community through their representative office. Stitt said in a statement, his name is Stitt, 3 T's. According to the Associated Press and other outlets, I will not stand idly by while this takes place. His statement came in response to the release of an audio recording by the McCurtain Gazette-News, a local newspaper that said it reported the comments at a public meeting. The recordings, which haven't been authenticated by NPR, reportedly include series of McCurtain County Sheriff Kevin Clardy, Commissioner Mark Jennings, Sheriff's Investigator Alicia Manning, and Jail Administrator Larry Hendricks. McCurtain Gazette news publisher Bruce Willington said he left the voice-activated recorder in the room following a county commissioners meeting in March 6 because he suspected officials were continuing to conduct business after the meeting in violation of the state's Open Meeting Act, the AP reported. Audio captured by the recorder appears to include officials discussing burned bodies, falling apart, hitmen they knew, and lynching. According to the transcript of the recordings, which I read just out of curiosity, which were basically, of the recordings, Jennings appears to say that back in the day, some could take a a damn black guy and whoop their ass and throw them in a cell, he said. Take them down to Mud Creek and hang them with a damn rope. But you can't do that anymore. They got more rights than we got. The governor called for resignation of Clardy, Jennings, and Manning. Hey, I like my acting impersonation. Pretty good, huh? I thought it was good. Manning and Hendricks. Leslie Berger, press secretary for Oklahoma Attorney General's office, told NPR in an email that the office was investigating the situation in McCurtain County. A message said the Jennings district email address was not immediately returned. The NPR also left a message from McCurtain County Sheriff's Office. The Oklahoma Sheriff's Association, a membership group that provides training and support, said on Tuesday that its board had voted to suspend Clardy, Manning, and Hendricks from the association. The sheriff's office said the recordings were illegal and may have been altered. Oh, okay. On Monday, the sheriff's office posted a lengthy statement to Facebook in which it said the recordings were obtained illegally and may have been altered. They weren't obtained illegally because he put a tape recorder during an open meeting. What they did illegally was conduct a meeting after everybody left. That's what happened. That's what happened, and the guy recorded it, and therefore his recording was legal because he brought his recorder to a public meeting. They're the ones that broke the law. In addition to being illegally obtained, which is not true, the audio does not match the transcription of the audio. Okay, whatever. The transcriber couldn't understand half of the words they were saying because they were muttering. Okay, so felony charges may be filed in the case, the sheriff's office added. The McCurtain County Commission meeting on Monday morning was attended by dozens of protesters, including Idabel Mayor Craig Young. KOSU reported. Idabel, which is located nearly 200 miles southeast of Oklahoma, is the police seat in McCurtain County. Young and others called for resignations. Officials were heard speaking on the recordings. Listen. The story that you guys heard, it does not represent McCurtain County. We have good folks in McCurtain County. If we were so racist, it would not be such a diverse group here, Young said, according to
I have black friends, hence I'm
somebody
not racist.
Made a mistake. We're here to ask that they pay for this mistake. No, this wasn't the county talking. These are people representing the people that are saying, yeah, these racists don't represent us. We don't have to resign. So that's who I was quoting. I wasn't quoting anybody defending these idiots, okay? Your turn.
All right. In culture news, let's talk about how video games have become a refuge for grief and other mentally taxing experiences of the human condition.
The opium of the masses. That's what it is. There you go.
The art of video games. As a video gamer player myself, I like to always reinforce the idea that video games are art, and a lot of them are very empathetic experiences. When James' father died, this is from Emma Flint. When James' father died, he did not know what any of us would do in the throes of grief. He sought comfort. He went looking for it in the expected places, friends, family. He found something unexpected. The video game Legend of Zelda: Majora's Mask. Dad had always loved games. He gave me his NES when he got the SNES, and my formative memories are playing Mario Kart 64 with him, my uncle, and my little sister. Shortly after my father passed, the Wii added some N64 games to its catalog, and I had loved to play growing up, and that started the journey I wanted to take. Forgive him. I had felt abandoned by him. When I was right at the shifting point of puberty, about to learn how to drive, he just wasn't there. Majora's Mask was always one of my favorites. I had the strategy guide and would read it to my dad in the truck when I would go with him to work during the summer. When I revisited it, I distinctly remember crying when I walked through the tunnel to the clock tower after the intro, knowing it was the first time I'd done it without him. People have theorized that Majora's Mask symbolizes the 5 stages of grief, but when I started to look at the game in this way, it eventually helped me to visit the grave alone for the first time since his funeral, about a year after his death. James is one of the many people who have found a route through grief in video games. It's often assumed that we long for avoidance when we venture into the imaginary worlds, and that they can indeed offer vital escapism when the real world is difficult. But the nature of video games demands active participation, which can help players to process their feelings from the real world expectations about the correct ways to grieve. In recent years, several games have been made about the experience of grief itself, such as Grice, Spiritfarer, Lost Worlds Beyond the Page. In each of these examples, the labyrinth complexities of grief are explored through a protective lens, letting us care for and guide grieving characters, enabling close proximity to our emotions while simultaneously shielding us from them. Sometimes the guidance is subtle, delicately interwoven in a large, overreaching story, as with Lost Words. But in games like Spiritfarer and Gris, we take an active hand in proceedings. These are potent narratives about death and the human experience that let us freely choose how to engage with them. Lost is an intimate, personal experience, Nicholas Gurin, Spiritfarer's creative director, explains, and video games allow users to have an active, interactive, introspective window at their own pace. Like novels and films, games can offer hope, a route out of an emotional state that might feel inescapable. Lost Words Beyond the Page provides an example of how someone can get through this, which can be hard to see when you're in the middle of grief, and the strategies that others use to manage and process their loss, says Caitlin Hitchcock, a clinical psychologist and researcher at University of Melbourne, who also acted as a consultant on the game. Much of this is subtle. Narrative is just one aspect of a video game. People who might be hesitant to watch a film about a young woman processing grief might be more likely to play a video game. The games take a hard topic, which many of us avoid, and presents it as a more portable or palatable context. Games have the power to normalize grief and offer comfort, as all art does, that can help us find meaning in our trauma so that we can overcome it. Avoiding thinking and talking about the loss can maintain poor psychological well-being, explains Hitchcock. Playing a game about someone else's grief is going to trigger thinking about your own grief, due to the way that associations between information are formed in the brain. The game can therefore reduce avoidance of your own grief, but potentially in a way that is less confronting or painful. Games about grief don't necessarily intend to educate. Instead, they often offer a sense of belonging to a universal experience, that they can normalize death. We never meant to impose a grand meaning or give a lesson with Spiritfarer. We just tried to open up a space for players to feel at ease around people who are about to die, to view death as a simple, undramatic part of life. To simply enjoy the little things and the small talk, to sometimes face the burden and the grim fate of passing away. More importantly, to feel our connections and the mutual influences that are shaping us. Yeah, I can relate to this, because I'm actually pretty matter-of-fact about death, in a way that comes off callous sometimes, right? Oh, somebody died? Too bad. What else am I supposed to say? It's the one thing that's guaranteed to happen to everyone in the world is death. Being bored and dying, that's the two things that always happen.
And taxes. Don't forget that. Well, Ben Franklin was right.
But
did we finish it or?
Yeah, that's the end of the article. I just thought it was really interesting because I think a lot of people will avoid grief like this, because I know I have a friend who, from my point of view, right, did not think about the death at all. They just, somebody died, but of course from my point of view I also do that. They didn't seem to be affected by the death at all. Like, well,
I'm not sure. People handle it everything in a different way. I mean, music is a good source too for, you just listen to your favorite music hours on end or whatever until you snap out of it or find something. Yeah, grief, depression, all that stuff. It's just, people turn to things to occupy their mind. It can be it's a chemical reaction in your brain. Depression and anything that stimulates Anti-depression is probably good. All right, so
Yep.
April 19th. What a day in history we have here. Wow. 1653. England's Rump Parliament was dissolved by Oliver Cromwell, who replaced the nominated Bare Bones Parliament, which dissolved the same year, leading to the declaration of the Protectorate. So this is the day Oliver Cromwell took charge in England.
Started
Napoleon
burning
III
witches.
I can't say it. More witches! What else floats? More witches! Napoleon III, President of the Second Republic and Emperor of France, was born in Paris in this day, 1808. Japan's first government-operated postal service opened in between Tokyo and Osaka in this day, 1871. In 1912, Navin Field, later called Tiger Stadium in Detroit, opened. Officially opened as both hosted for Tiger Stadium. Officially opened in this day in 1912. Tiger Stadium in Detroit. Really hard to read these articles sometimes. They included facts from other places that don't have anything to do with anything. On this day in 1914, striking miners and their families in Ludlow, Colorado were attacked by the state's National Guard and company guards. 25 people killed, known as the Ludlow Massacre. If you haven't heard, the Ludlow Massacre. Another crazy incident that happened on 4/19. Let's get on to the horrible stuff that happened on February 19th. I mean, Jessica Lange was born in 1949. That's not horrible. U.S. Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens was born in Chicago in 1920. That's not horrible. The fizzling dissolution of the Ottoman Empire, Turkey's Grand National Assembly voted to adopt the full Republican Constitution in 1924, with General Mustafa Kemal, who had first proclaimed the Turkish Republic about 6 months earlier, became the first president of the Republic. Pierre Elliott Trudeau in 1968 of the Liberal Party became Prime Minister of Canada. In that post, he discouraged the French separatist movement and oversaw the formation of a new constitution and established relations with China. Now the horrible stuff. Well, let's do one more. American race car driver Danica Patrick won the IndyCar 300 in 2008, becoming the first woman to win an IndyCar championship. Now the horrible stuff. 1999, two disgruntled and heavily armed students entered Columbine High School in Littleton, Colorado, and murdered 13 people before killing themselves. So we're two massacres down, the Ludlow Massacre and the Littleton Massacre. Next horrible event that happened in April. Well, this was April 20th. Oh, shit. This is tomorrow. I'm accidentally doing tomorrow's. Okay. Horrible stuff happened on the 20th and the 19th. Now the stuff for the 19th. Sorry. It's going to be an extra long segment today because I was reading the wrong date because I scrolled too far down. All right. English composer was David Ricardo was believed to be born this day in 1772. Mae West was born on this day. Actress Mae West was sentenced to 10 days in jail, convicted of obscenity and corrupting the morals of youth when she portrayed a prostitute in a Brooklyn Broadway play, Sex, which she also wrote. So 10 days in jail, 1927, for voluptuous Mae West. In 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, the act of Polish Jews under Nazi occupation, began this day. It was quelled 4 days later, on May 16th. After all, it was Hitler. Students in 1960, students in South Korea began demonstrating against President Syngman Rhee, who had declared victory in a national election, which many claimed was marred by fraud. Okay, horrible, disgusting things that happened. 1993, the 51-day standoff, U.S. federal agents, some 80 members of the Millennium Branch Davidian religious group, perished in a fire at their compound in Waco, Texas. Other horrible news and what happened in the worst act of terrorism in U.S. history. Up to that point, a truck bomb destroyed the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 and injuring more than 500 people.
The Oklahoma bombing.
The Oklahoma bombing happened on the 19th, 2 years after the Waco, right?
Yeah.
The Waco thing was in response to Ruby Ridge. Ruby Ridge, right, was the thing that happened around this time, and that's not even on here. That happened around this time, too. Also, on this day, the American Revolution began. Launched in 1775, in the battles of Lexington and Concord, the American Revolution was an effort by 13 British colonies in North America with help from France, Spain, Netherlands, and win their independence. Birthdays today. Charles Darwin died on this day in 1882, age 73. Died in England. Birthdays of this day: Maria Sharapova, Russian tennis player. Rivaldo, Brazilian athlete, was born this day in 1972. Maria Sharapova was born in 1987. Mukesh Ambani, an Indian businessman, was born in 1957. In 1937, Joseph Estrada was born, president of the Philippines, and Dudley Moore, British actor and comedian, was born this day in 1935. And a new feature with I'm trying out, in the United States, they have a day for everything. And you look up a day and it's something day, okay? Today is National Banana Day, National North Dakota Day, which, why is there two Dakotas? I have no idea. National Amaretto Day, which get drunk on that. It's wine made from almonds. It's got an almond, taste or whatever. National Garlic Day. National Oklahoma City Bombing Commemoration Day, which makes sense. And National Hanging Out Day. I don't know what National Hanging Out Day is, but I think everybody in the United States has perfected it. Oh. It encourages communities to learn the benefits, both financially, environmentally, of using a clothesline for drying laundry. All right, that's what it is. National Hanging Out Day. That's today in the world.
Then, this has been Allison from Europe talking about Brexit for 3 hours. I hope to see you tomorrow for more news on what's going on in Europe.
Yes, the comprehensive news of the world does take a while. You understand? So sometimes we make mistakes. And I've already given tomorrow's 420 edition. So tomorrow, we're probably going to be... Well, tomorrow's 420. Let's put it that way. What are we going to do tomorrow? On Before Coffee! Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.